The UES Prometheus hung like a wounded whale in the cosmic darkness, her hull bleeding atmosphere and sparks into the void. Chief Engineer Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the vibrating bulkhead, feeling the ship's death throes through the metal around her. The engineering deck buzzed with panicked voices and the acrid smell of burning circuits. "Status report," she barked, her weathered face illuminated by emergency lighting that cast dancing shadows across the massive fusion cores. "Engines are gone, Mum," called out Marcus Chen, her second in command. Blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. "The hegemony bastards hit us with surgical precision. Weapons offline, life support at 30% and falling." Elena stared through the viewport at the alien battle fleet maintaining their distance. Like sharks circling wounded prey, the hegemony ships were sleek, predatory things that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They'd struck without warning at the edge of the Void Nebula, turning humanity's greatest achievement into scrap metal in minutes. "Casualties?" Elena asked. Though she dreaded the answer, "Surprisingly light," replied Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's chief medical officer, her surgical scrubs stained with coolant and blood. "They wanted us alive. Question is why?" The answer came through the comm system in the form of a translated hegemony broadcast. "Human vessel, you have violated hegemony. Space, your ship is disabled. Prepare for processing." Elena's jaw tightened. Processing. She'd heard the stories from the outer colonies' entire populations disappeared. Their ships found drifting empty, stripped of all technology and resources. The hegemony didn't just kill, they harvested. "Ma'am," whispered Tommy Rodriguez, barely 18, and on his first deep space assignment. "The gravitational sensors are showing we're caught in the star's pull. At current trajectory, we'll hit the corona in 72 hours. Elena looked out at the dying red giant that dominated their view, its surface roiling with solar storms that could incinerate a planet. The hegemony had positioned them perfectly close, enough to die slowly, far enough that rescue was impossible. "They want us to despair," she said quietly, then raised her voice to address the entire engineering crew. "Listen up, people. The hegemony thinks they've killed us. They think a broken ship means broken people." She turned to face the 50 engineers, technicians, and maintenance workers who formed the backbone of the Prometheus. Their faces showed fear, yes, but also something else, the stubborn defiance that had carried humanity to the stars. "They're about to learn they couldn't be more wrong. We've got 50,000 colonists, enough raw materials to build a city, and the most powerful fusion reactors ever constructed. Most importantly, we've got something they don't understand: human ingenuity." Elena smiled grimly. "Time to show them what happens when you leave humans alive with nothing to lose." The Prometheus's main assembly hall had been transformed into a war room. Elena stood before a massive holographic display showing the ship's schematics, her voice carrying clearly to the packed crowd of colonists. Families sat together on makeshift benches: farmers, teachers, doctors, engineers, even children old enough to understand what was at stake. "We have 68 hours before orbital decay," Elena announced, manipulating the hologram to show their trajectory toward the star. "The hegemony expects us to die quietly. Instead, we're going to build something they've never seen." Captain James Morrison stepped forward, his uniform torn, but his bearing still commanding. "Elena, I've seen the preliminary plans. What you're proposing, it's impossible. We're talking about gutting an entire colony ship and rebuilding it into a weapon." "Not just any weapon," Elena replied, zooming in on the agricultural sections. "These bays were designed to feed 50,000 people for decades. The hydroponics systems use electromagnetic field generators, powerful enough to accelerate metallic projectiles to incredible velocities. We're sitting on the components for the largest rail gun ever constructed." Dr. Kim raised her hand. "The fusion reactors you're talking about, overloading them?" "Not overloading, reconfiguring." Elena highlighted the power systems. "These reactors were meant to provide steady power for centuries. But if we reroute the plasma flow and use the magnetic containment systems as focusing arrays, we can create a directed energy weapon capable of cracking a planet's crust." A murmur ran through the crowd. Marcus Chen, his head now bandaged, spoke up from the front row. The structural stress alone would tear the ship apart, which is why we're not just building a weapon, Elena said, expanding the schematic to show the rotating habitat rings. We're building a distributed weapons platform. Each ring becomes an independent firing system. The ship doesn't just carry the weapon, it becomes the weapon. 10-year-old Amy Okafor, sitting with her mother near the back, raised her small hand. Miss Elena, what can I do? I'm not an engineer. Elena's expression softened. Amy, every person on this ship is part of the weapon now. The targeting computers need human operators. The ammunition needs to be manufactured and loaded. The systems need to be monitored and maintained. We're not just building a gun, we're becoming its crew. She turned back to the crowd. The hegemony builds their ships in factories, perfect and standardized. But we're going to show them something they can't comprehend. A weapon built by people fighting for their lives, using nothing but ingenuity and desperation. Captain Morrison stepped beside her. This isn't just about survival anymore, is it? Elena's eyes hardened as she looked toward the viewport where the hegemony ships waited like vultures. No, Jim, it's about sending a message. Humanity doesn't just survive, we adapt. Every time you think you've defeated us, you've actually created something worse. She addressed the crowd one final time. We have 3 days to perform a miracle. Families will work together, each taking responsibility for different weapon systems. Children will learn to operate targeting computers alongside their parents. Grandparents will teach young engineers tricks learned over lifetimes of making do with less. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then Amy's mother, Dr. Grace Okafor, stood up. What do you need us to do? Elena smiled. Everything. We're going to tear this ship apart and rebuild it into humanity's answer to anyone who thinks we're easy prey. The Prometheus had become a hive of controlled chaos. Elena moved through corridors filled with the sounds of cutting torches, welding, sparks, and the rhythmic hammering of metal being shaped by hand. 64 hours until solar incineration, and they were ahead of schedule. In what used to be Agricultural Bay 7, the Okafor family worked alongside a dozen others, carefully removing the massive electromagnetic field generators that once nurtured Earth crops. Amy, despite her age, had proven surprisingly adept at operating the smaller assembly robots, her small fingers perfect for the delicate wiring work. Mom, look, Amy called excitedly, pointing to the targeting display she'd been calibrating. The computer says this rail gun can hit a target the size of a basketball from 10,000 kilometers. Dr. Grace Okafor paused in her work rewiring power conduits. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Now remember what Miss Elena taught us: precision matters more than power. 3 decks down, Marcus Chen supervised the most dangerous operation, reconfiguring the fusion reactors. The engineering team worked in rotating shifts, each wearing radiation suits that made them look like armored knights. In the flickering plasma light, magnetic bottle stability is holding, reported Lisa Park, a former hydroponics specialist who'd proven surprisingly talented with high-energy physics. But Elena, the power output we're generating, it's beyond anything in human experience. Elena, her face streaked with grease and her hair pulled back in a practical bun, nodded grimly. That's the point. The hegemony shields are designed to stop conventional weapons. This isn't conventional. In the habitat rings, entire families had formed assembly lines. Captain Morrison found himself working alongside retired schoolteacher Margaret Walsh, both of them carefully crafting the projectiles that would feed their improvised weapons. Never thought I'd spend my retirement building ammunition, Margaret said with surprising cheer, her arthritic hands steady as she assembled guidance chips. Ma'am, Morrison replied, I never thought I'd command a ship that was also a gun. The real genius of Elena's design became apparent when Dr. Kim made her rounds. The medical bay had been partially converted into a targeting center, where colonists, with the steadiest hands, operated precision instruments. Children worked alongside their parents, their young reflexes perfect for the split-second timing required. It's not just a weapon, Dr. Kim observed, watching 12-year-old Kai Nakamura help his grandmother operate a firing sequence computer. It's a community. Everyone has a role. Everyone matters. Elena paused in her inspection of the main firing chamber, a cathedral-sized space. where the agricultural bays had been gutted and rebuilt. The railgun stretched the length of 3 football fields, its magnetic coils humming with barely contained energy. Tommy Rodriguez approached her, no longer the frightened teenager from 3 days ago. The crisis had aged him, carved confidence into his young features. "Ma'am, we're getting energy readings that shouldn't be possible. The fusion reactors are stable, but the output is exactly what we need," Elena finished. She looked around at the impossible thing they'd built, not just a weapon, but a testament to human adaptability. "Tommy, do you understand what we've really accomplished here?" He followed her gaze across the weapon that filled the chamber. "We built a planet killer out of farming equipment and desperation," Elena smiled. "We proved that there's no such thing as a civilian ship when humans are aboard. Every tool is a weapon, every setback is an opportunity, and every defeat." She looked toward the viewports where the hegemony fleet waited. "Is just the setup for an impossible comeback." The hegemony battle fleet emerged from their patrol formation with predatory grace, their sleek hulls catching the red giant's dying light. Admiral Krex studied the tactical display, his eyes narrowing at the readings from the human vessel. Status of the prey ship, he demanded in the clicking language of his species. "Still intact, Admiral," his tactical officer replied. "They appear to have modified their vessel. Significant energy signatures detected." Krax's mandibles clicked in amusement. Desperate creatures often make futile gestures before death. "Maintain distance and observe. I want to understand what these humans think they can accomplish." Aboard the Prometheus, Elena stood in the primary command center of space that hadn't existed for days ago, hastily constructed from the ship's former observation deck. Around her, 50 colonists operated stations that controlled different aspects of their impossible weapon. The Okafor family managed targeting systems. The Chen family controlled power distribution, and Captain Morrison coordinated the firing sequences. "Hegemony ships are approaching," reported Marcus, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. "Distance, 50,000 kilometers and closing." Elena looked around at the faces surrounding her people, who for days ago had been farmers, teachers, children. Now they were the crew of humanity's most devastating weapon. "Remember, we only get one shot at surprise. After that, it becomes a battle of adaptation versus standardization." Young Amy Okafor looked up from her targeting console. "Miss Elena, the computers are showing perfect lock on their flagship." "Good girl," Elena replied, then activated the ship-wide communication system. "All stations, this is Elena Vasquez. For days ago, the hegemony tried to murder 50,000 innocent people. They thought leaving us alive was an act of mercy." Her voice carried through every corridor, every converted bay, every improvised weapons station. "Today, we teach them that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology, it's our refusal to accept defeat. All stations report ready status." The responses came in sequence. Families calling out their readiness. Okafor family, targeting systems operational. Chen family, power distribution at maximum. Rodriguez family, ammunition feed systems ready. Morrison family, firing coordination standing by. Elena took a deep breath through the viewport. She could see the hegemony flagship, a kilometer long instrument of conquest that had probably destroyed hundreds of worlds. "Admiral Krex," she said, opening a communication channel. "This is Chief Engineer Elena Vasquez of the human vessel Prometheus. You made a mistake when you left us alive." Krax's image appeared on the screen, his alien features unreadable. "Human, you speak boldly for one facing extinction. What mistake do you imagine we made?" Elena smiled. "You assumed a disabled ship meant disabled people. You're about to learn the difference." She turned to Amy, whose small hands hovered over the firing controls. "Would you like to do the honors, sweetheart?" Amy's eyes were bright with determination, far beyond her years. "For everyone who won't get to see their new home. For everyone who deserves a chance to live free," Elena confirmed. Amy pressed the firing sequence, and the Prometheus transformed from a crippled refugee ship into a force of nature. The railgun discharged with the power of a small star, its projectile accelerated to near light speed by electromagnetic forces that had never before been harnessed by human hands. the hegemony flagship simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the kinetic energy of Elena's impossible weapon. Admiral Crax's last thought was a moment of genuine respect. These humans had rebuilt their tomb into their enemy's grave. 6 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed human outpost at Kepler-4b, watching as another civilian transport approached the planet. To untrained eyes, the UES New Horizon looked like any other colony ship. Agricultural bays, residential modules, the standard configuration for peaceful expansion. Elena knew better. Hidden within that innocent exterior were the components for humanity's latest adaptive weapon design. The hegemony intelligence reports are fascinating, Captain Morrison said, joining her at the viewport. He now commanded the rapidly growing human defense fleet, if you could call it a fleet. When every ship served dual purposes, they're calling it the Prometheus Doctrine, Elena replied. Reviewing the intelligence briefing on her tablet, they've identified over 100 human ships that they suspect might be weapons in disguise. The funny part is, they're probably underestimating by half. Dr. Kim approached them, leading a group of young engineers, the next generation, who would carry forward humanity's new approach to warfare. Among them was Amy Okafor, now 11 and already designing targeting systems that impressed veteran military engineers. The new students are ready for their first practical demonstration, Dr. Kim announced. Amy's group has been working on something interesting. Amy stepped forward, her confidence remarkable for someone so young. Miss Elena, we've been studying the mining ship Iron Will. The crew thinks they're just extracting asteroids, but we've calculated that their processing equipment could be reconfigured into a mass driver capable of accelerating asteroids to weapons-grade velocities. Elena raised an eyebrow. Turning asteroid miners into planet bombardment platforms? Every human ship is a potential weapon, Amy said, echoing Elena's own words from 6 months ago. We just have to see the possibilities. Through the viewport, they watched as 3 hegemony cruisers approached the system, maintaining what they thought was a safe distance. The alien ships had been shadowing human expansion for months, trying to understand the new threat they'd accidentally created. Should we be concerned? Morrison asked. Elena shook her head. They're not here to attack. They're here to learn. The hegemony has fought thousands of species, defeated countless civilizations, but they've never encountered an enemy that improves every time they're beaten. She pulled up the tactical display showing the system's defenses. What looked like a peaceful collection of civilian ships, mining platforms, and agricultural stations was actually an interconnected web of improvised weapons, each more creative than the last. The colony ship becomes a railgun platform. The mining ship becomes a mass driver. The agricultural station becomes a biological warfare laboratory. The research vessel becomes a gravity weapon. Elena smiled. Every defeat teaches us something new about survival. Amy looked up at her mentor. What happens when they finally understand what we've become? Elena considered the question seriously. The hegemony had already begun changing their tactics, becoming more cautious, less aggressive. Word was spreading throughout the galaxy about the species that turned every setback into an advantage. Then we adapt again, Elena said finally. That's what humans do, Amy. We don't just survive, we evolve. Every challenge makes us stronger. Every defeat teaches us something new. She looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in that vast darkness, other species were watching, learning, deciding whether humanity was a threat or an opportunity. The hegemony wanted to process us like cattle, Elena said. Instead, they created something they never expected, a species that treats every tool as a weapon, every obstacle as a puzzle to solve, and every enemy as a teacher. Amy nodded solemnly. So what's our next lesson? Elena's smile was equal parts warmth and predatory anticipation. We're going to teach the galaxy that there's no such thing as defeating humanity. There's only making us more dangerous. The New Horizon docked with the station, and Elena could already see the potential in its innocent-looking cargo bays. Another weapon disguised as hope, another testament to human ingenuity. The Prometheus Doctrine was spreading, ship by ship, world by world. Humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. Never let your enemies know what you're truly capable of until it's too late for them to stop you. Asterisk.